Every single week, I tap into someone else's audience on purpose. And every week, my guests tap into mine. That's not luck. That's strategy. Strategic partners and partnerships are one of the fastest, most powerful ways to grow, especially if you're a founder, consultant, or small team without a massive audience yet. This week on Strategy Talks, I'm bringing on someone who gets it. Alex is here. She's a strategist who helps brands grow by partnering smarter. We're breaking down all sorts of things, so be sure to stay tuned. I'll be right back. This is Strategy Talks.
Let's strategize together. Let's hear it from an expert. Join the conversation, it's informative and free. You and me, let's talk some strategy. Now here's your host, Morin-van.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a special episode of Strategy Talks. We're live at noon Eastern Time. My guest is joining me from Denver, Colorado, and we just figured this might be a great time for some of you who normally can't catch us live and have to watch the after show or listen to the podcast. So we figured this might be a great thing to test. So welcome if you're here live. Let us know if you are live and where you're watching us from. Maybe you're on Facebook, on LinkedIn, or on YouTube. We'd love to know that. Again, this is live. So if you have questions as my guest and I are talking, please put them in the comments. We'd love to answer them in real time. So without much further ado, I am going to bring onto the stage with me my friend Alexandra. How are you today?
I'm fabulous. So excited to connect.
I know. So we're going to talk about partnerships today and what partnerships can do for whether you're a founder, an entrepreneur, a small business, small team. Why do so many small teams treat partnerships like a someday tactic when it could be their fastest growth channel? Because you know all about this, right?
I do. And honestly, I think a lot of the time it just gets missed, right? It's not something we think about when we go to the brands that we want to imitate or mirror. So often we are looking at them through the lens of how do I be like them? And so for the biggest thing, I think it's just a miss. And it also takes a lot of creative thinking, because some of the best things that you can do for a strategic partnership and the ones that are really successful come from a service mind of how can I both serve their audience or their needs as a brand and align those with mine. And so it's just such a different shift in the world of marketing that I think it just gets skipped. Additionally, marketers are just hit with so many different tactics, right? It's like your go-to-market strategy. You want your PR, your social media, your ads, and all of that. There's really not a strategic partnerships line in most of those, kind of go-to-market plans. And so I think it is honestly, especially in the startup world, I think it's such a miss not to really lean into those.
All right. I've got a question just to frame this conversation. When we're talking partnerships, strategic partnerships, are you suggesting we partner with our direct competitors or with companies that are complementary to ours? Or can we do both?
I mean, direct competitors is always an interesting choice. So I don't know if I'd lean out of that in the gate. Really, when I'm looking for a strategic partnership, as a brand manager, what I'm looking for is somebody who already has the ear of my ideal customer and they've already got trust. I do try to lean into a different segment of the market. So coming a lot from the outdoor space, if I'm working in a brand that's largely tents or sleeping bags, I'm looking for somebody that fills a different need in the same kit. So while there's probably options of direct competitors that work, I would probably lean a little bit for those. Some overlap is fine, especially, again, coming from the outdoor world, so many brands have kind of expanded. So really what I'm looking for there is where's your core strengths? Are you guys really filling this need on the kit. And, for example, Sierra Designs, we really specialized in the gear. So tents were our big spot, sleeping bags and packs. While we had apparel, it wasn't necessarily our sweet spot. It's not what we were known for. So I wouldn't mind going to an apparel brand that even might have some competition in the apparel, because their kind of core capabilities versus our core capabilities differed a little bit.
Oh, I love that. That's a great analogy. Now, I started out my career in a lot of local businesses, and one strategic partnership, and I'm just going to use this as an example, was when I had a client who was a college prep consultant. He partnered with the local driving school because they had the same target audience, parents of teenagers, right?
Yes.
And so they ended up doing a webinar together, and this is local, small town, but that was a great way to partner and to tap into each other's audiences and to, get on the radar of more of your ICP. So, the same thing would happen. I had a client who did self-defense classes, and I was in the running club, and then there was a running store. So they ended up doing a self-defense class for runners. So thinking outside of, online strategic partnerships, that could also be an in-person, collaborating on events. Just to put this in people's mind, it doesn't always look like, hey, I'm going to promote you online, you promote me online. And that gets me to the next question. What is like the biggest mistake people make when they think strategic partnership and then they've got nothing to show for it? What are they doing wrong?
Oh, that's such a great question. Really, it's defining the goals of the partnership up front. Because like you said, there's some really easy ways to do it online. And that's kind of almost your great entry point to see if your audiences are kind of going to cross resonate. And so you can almost take like a scaffold approach to those. For example, again, coming from the outdoor world, a lot of times the easiest one was an online giveaway, right? We've all seen them online. Lots of industries do this, and it's such an easy entry point. And the ones that I saw really well, first off, curated great brands to kind of align on that partnership. And then everyone had to have an element of commitment for it, which those are really great starting points. But what I love, and kind of what you alluded to, is let's get it off the interwebs, so to say, too. Let's figure out ways to build community to get in front of people and really take that connection deeper, because so much of what we have in trust and relationship transfers in that kind of in-person component. Similar to how you were talking about some of your clients and how they were connecting. Strategic partnerships are something that apply to every industry. And referral partners, this isn't a new tactic, right? But there was a woman who was looking to build she's a financial investor, and she was looking on how to build this practice. And a lot of the people that she was looking for are just everyday employees. And it's like, well, who has the ear of everyday employees? Who is already connecting with them? And also, who is invested in the idea of helping them set up their retirements, their 401ks, and navigating that? So connecting with her, what we realized is HR is actually part of their job. And, whether it falls specifically under their job or it's kind of that subsidiary of their job, they are invested in helping the financial wellness of their employees, especially around 401ks and retirements. So what I ended up coaching her was to go network with HR professionals to come into their businesses and start coaching and teaching on how to best strategize or do the 401k onboarding and really education around that. So again, online is a great place to start, the cross promotion, the podcasting, the giveaways. But really, once you can determine those alignments, there's so many different great ways that you can take it up to the next step. A couple of years ago, one of the really big trends was a lot of product collaborations.
Yes.
And so this is actually even, a company in manufacturing space that I was connecting with last week. They're looking to grow into a space and they've been really big in the hunting space. And it's like they've been growing really rapidly, but they're kind of they've not built their strong marketing foundation because it spreads so fast through word of mouth and just really good placements. And it's like, wow, how much brand authority and trust could you build if you, a pack company in the hunting space, went and did a product collaboration with, the example I brought to them was with a knife company. And if you could create a custom product that serves really well both audiences, that's specifically tailored for that knife, you're going to win a lot of the support from that other company because they're going to be jazzed, right? And, you know, in the outdoor industry and in the sports industry, they're all product junkies at heart. Like that is just the reality of working in those offices. We all have garages that are maxed out. So if you can serve their clients really well and make them really happy, they're going to become your biggest advocate, and you can leverage that and take it to market.
That's great. I have a question that just popped up in my head. When we talk about strategic partnerships, I'm thinking also, would a strategic partnership also include a company that say they want to give back, so they partner with like a nonprofit, or they partner with, you know, mission driven nonprofit so they can give back to the community? Is that a strategic partnership that also works well?
I mean, I love those ones. They're brilliant. And in fact, I was just the Mike Rowe, big name in kind of everywhere, right? For dirty jobs. I was just watching a video of his the other day, and the Montana Knife Company was going to relaunch one of their knives. And a portion of the proceeds for that knife was supporting his foundation. So unasked to his $2-3 million followers, he hopped on and did a video highlighting how amazing this knife was and how it was coming up for launch because it was helping support his foundation. And so, yes, to your point, mission-driven connections, when done properly, and you're just not writing the check and sending it in and quietly it goes off to the night, which is great too. Nonprofits need
Right.
But when you can kind of leverage that trust and bring that in association to your organization, especially, I mean, the millennials became so mission-oriented. They wanted to understand what programs, brands they were supporting were doing to kind of help give back. And also we're seeing that trend continue on to Gen Z. So the more that your organization can kind of figure out what is going to be the most supportive for them and where does that alignment actually take place, the better for your brand it's going to be.
That's awesome. Yeah, I remember now, all of a sudden, this is kind of what popped up as you were talking about a partnership and a knife with a fanny pack or with a backpack. I was like, oh, Darn Tough is a sock company in Vermont. I live in Vermont. And during the pandemic, they partnered with a local food pantry, and they made, actually think it was the farmer's market, and they made a specific sock for farmer's market with like fruit and veggies on it. Of course, I ordered like 2 pair. Half the money went to support the local farmers, and it was great. So that kind of popped in my mind when I said, you know, that I think was a very strategic partnership. And it worked really well. And it was instant for me. I love the socks. They guarantee the socks. Why not buy the socks, right? So I see that. So if somebody is watching this or listening to this as a podcast, where is a good place to start? Does these ideas, do they start in the boardroom? Do they start in the marketing department? Do they start with somebody has an idea? Do they start at a networking event? How does one go about having a conversation about strategic partnerships?
I mean, there's so many angles for strategic partnerships. Really, there's a variety of different ways they could come from. When I was at Sierra Designs, another brand had connected with us through our product department because they were looking to do a collaboration. Oftentimes your social good programs they're nestled under marketing. So that's a really great place for starting. As I'm a marketer, I'm going to kind of give some ideas and some tips for the marketing department, because those are kind of the areas that I understand a little bit better. But if you're a startup, really one of the fastest ways you can get the word out on a super bootstrap budget is really leaning into strategic partners. So that means out of the gate, you have to have a really strong understanding of who your ideal customer is and really define that audience. Then what I want you to do is go out and look at the market and find other companies, brands, or verticals that are also intersecting with this audience, that are going to align with your values and that are already serving with them and have the customers there. So that's kind of your first game plan, is really understanding who the players are that are already serving your audience. The next thing that you want to do is you want to understand what the audience needs and what your product is serving in that space, and what your potential partners, what angle they're coming at from. And then the next thing I want you to look at is the other brand. What are their motives and what are their goals hitting this audience? I mean, obviously the superficial one, you both want to make money, right? But take it a step deeper. What is at risk with this audience? What are different challenges that they're facing? What does the landscape look like for them? So I want you to step into their shoes so that when you start coming up with ideas on what a potential partnership could look like, you're going to craft the most compelling partnership for them, because you'll have an idea of some of their goals. So for example, I was chatting with a company, Rise Golf. And so we're all familiar with pickleball, right?
Yep.
Pickleball, all of a sudden there's pickleball courts on every single tennis court in your neighborhood, and they're packed, right? These are courts that have been empty for well over a decade. And all of a sudden you can't get 5 minutes on them because they're booked out months in advance. So he has a company, it's called Rise Golf, that wants to do what pickleball did to tennis to golf. And so he's created a game that's it's easier for entry. It's going to make it more accessible, and it brings this social component back. So in connecting with him and kind of working on a little bit of a launch strategy, and being a bootstrapper myself, who already has, incentives in this space, who's already motivated, and who's kind of impacted by it. So the first one is, who's the most impacted by kind of the decline of golf over the area? Well, golf courses, right? They're going to be very motivated to figure out different ways to leverage the huge spaces that they have that aren't necessarily cheap to maintain. And there's going to be certain days during the week that maybe they're not as full. So, because, I'm not super into golf trends, but he was very passionate about making the sport more accessible. So let's say it's Tuesday night. And Tuesday night, they're completely empty. I don't know how many golfers are out on Tuesday nights, but that is a key stakeholder in this marketplace that's really invested on just getting foot traffic there. Yes, it has to be semi-golf related, but as they're seeing these numbers roll in each month, they might be really motivated. So that's kind of your first stakeholder to it. The other question is, who has an audience already that's looking for social, for fun? Those are kind of core values of his brand, that already has a network built. Well, there's a lot of social club networks here in Colorado, around the country, right? So now look at them. They have a network. They already have groups that are establishing, and they have people who are wanting to come out, try different things, to have a social experience. So one of the things we connected on is to try and figure out how he can kind of merge those stakeholders and build a program or a pilot or test it out to get some social clubs at some golf clubs on, say, for example, arbitrarily we made up Tuesday nights. And so again, it's really understanding who is, invested in this problem and who has your audience.
Oh, that's a great answer. I love that. And that's just very strategic thinking. So in order to make this work, you have to present a plan to somebody to make them say yes. Mm-hmm. What would make somebody say no to your plan? Or why would somebody not want to do this with you if you're presenting and you've done your research? Is there ever a reason when somebody comes to you? Are there some red flags you need to watch out for?
There's always going to be some risk associated, right? And it depends. So one of your jobs is to mitigate that risk out of the gate. Sure. If there are costs associated, especially if you're going to a brand that's a bit bigger than you, there's potential that they, don't have the time, the bandwidth, or the money already allocated. Timing's a really important one. Working in the budget space towards the end of the year is a tough sell. So understanding kind of, how established that company is and how their budgets might be impacted. For example, when I was at Kokopelli Pack Rafts, we didn't have a budget for, fancy magazines and all of that, right? But, my sales guy was coming to me every other week saying, I want to buy some ads. I want to buy some ads. I want to buy ads. And I'm like, I have no money. And so what I did is I came up with this idea, and a group of us worked on it together. We were just going to create our own magazine and then have our own ad spend in this magazine. And so we got several different content creators, and, we purchased into a product for them, and they, did us a couple of favors, and we were going to create our own magazine that was really content rich and really creative, captivating stories. And so I went to probably 5 to 7 brands, and I got 3 or 4 other brands to sign on for it. But the biggest thing that was important for them is that we front loaded the costs.
Right.
And so because it was going to launch in the end of Q1, but we were signing the contract in the end of Q4, we didn't require payment until the following year. And so that I had 2 brands come back and say that if we had not done that, they wouldn't have been able to sign on because their budgets were already set. The other thing too is, even if my magazine flopped, which we launched it the same day that they announced a national pandemic with COVID. So, points for timing on that one. Nobody saw that one coming. But they were also getting a huge trove of assets. So even if the deliverables on the magazine side didn't quite measure up, and we ran into some bumps because we launched over COVID, the other value of what they were getting offset the cost. And so understanding budgets, time commitments, and those timelines are really important. Again, that empathy to set into their shoes and really understand what their drivers are is important. And then you're also going to have a little bit of credibility on your side. Again, especially coming from the startup space, brand new company, they might look at you and say you're crazy. So, having a lot of drive, having a detailed plan, but also having enough flexibility that you can have a conversation in case you maybe didn't nail what their goals were out of the gate.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, Alex, how do you keep a partnership from feeling uneven or unequal? Somebody comes to you, they want all this stuff, they want you to invest, they asking for, a product merge or whatever. And you're just looking at it going, that's great for you, but how about me? Like how does that, I think sometimes people get probably very excited about a potential merge, but is that something that if you're the one proposing the partnership, you have to be able to answer that question when somebody says, what is in it for me? Or do you know that sometimes it's an uneven partnership and you just go with that?
I guess it depends on the definition of uneven, because anytime a small brand can kind of, hitch their wagon to a bigger brand, it's going to be a little uneven. To your question, yes, you always have to answer the question, what's in it for them? And it has to be enticing enough that they're going to say yes, which again is really why it's so important to look at it through their lens and say, what are the values? What's the benefits? Things like that. And, sometimes it won't be a fit. We were looking at a product collaboration with Sierra Designs, and a lot of those strategic value drivers lined up, but ultimately the terms didn't quite align. And there were also outside influences, product supply chains and product development and different things like that were just all wild because it was post-COVID and supply chains and everything. So ultimately at the end, we couldn't quite overcome those risks for a product collaboration. And, if it fails, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes it's at least broaching the conversation, exploring it. And at the end of the day, at least you're friendly with the other brand or the other organization that might lead to referrals or different collaborations down the line.
All right. That makes sense. So say I'm a consultant, maybe I'm a life coach, I don't know, and I have 1,000 followers, not much of a list, and I want to partner with somebody to tap into their audience. Is there any play I can do this month to anybody I can reach out to?
Yeah. So if I were a life coach, ultimately kind of some of the things that you're looking to do are to meet and deepen the life experience of your clients, right? You want them to help with goal setting, with, there's probably a financial element, with their relationships, with, there's so many different areas of their life that would play into life coaching. So the first one, if you're looking at a physical product angle, I would look at journals or goal setting,
Mm.
or a lot of those different products that intersect with people's lives, that give them the tools and the application to actually start to take those goals into action, right? So from a physical product side, that's probably where I'd be looking. And maybe it's something simple. Maybe you guys co-collaborate on a couple of downloads and you guys get
Mm.
the email list from those together. It's kind of similar idea to the giveaway, but you guys could collaborate on some downloads that are cross promotional and you guys share them out to each other's audiences. You could start incorporating your products into your actual program, and maybe you guys look at some webinars or things like that. So really those are kind of one area. Another area, if you're a life coach, most likely you're going to be really good in 2 or 3 out of the verticals, and there's maybe 5 verticals. So if you're seeing a trend in your clients and maybe they're all struggling with marriages. I mean, we're coming up to Valentine's Day, so right,
Let's talk about
lots
it.
of marriage, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you look at relationship coaches or people who are diving into that, and connecting with them and finding ways, how to focus on that relationship side and how it plays in to the personal development. And so maybe it's a webinar you guys work on together. Maybe it's a challenge going into Valentine's Day, because you love a good challenge going into Valentine's Day. Or maybe you focus on what to do after Valentine's Day, right? I mean, we put all of this buildup onto one night where the reservations are impossible to get and all of the menu prices are
And
higher,
this year it's on a Saturday, no less. Oh my
right?
goodness. Yeah.
Don't
It's
worry, we're
crazy.
super romantic. My in-laws are coming into town this weekend, so we'll all be in a cabin together.
That's wonderful.
Right? Romance on high. So yeah, so maybe you focus on what comes after Valentine's Day. How do you keep that momentum alive? Or the other side too, maybe it's a financial piece. Like really knowing what your skill set and your strengths are and kind of where your gaps are can be a great strategic alignment with a strategic partner. Or what areas are you seeing a lot of problems with your customer base currently, right? Maybe it's all, I don't know, maybe they're all struggling to plan a trip and you need a travel agent. I mean, wouldn't it be great if it was that? But what are you seeing that's not your skill set? And then go find somebody who can help fill that gap.
That's awesome. All right, we're almost at the end, but I've got one question for you.
All
What's
right.
one piece of partnership advice that you hear quite often that makes you cringe, that you're like, ooh, I can't believe people say this?
I mean, it's really the transactional piece that just grinds my gears, where you really view people and relationships as just that transaction. It's, the networking for the sake of networking. It's, pushing your card on everyone. And that's not entirely strategic partnerships, but I'll never forget, I was working on a boat in San Diego, and it's one of those like boats that goes out and sails around that. And I was working, right? And this, young realtor. Now, realtors can be amazing. This guy was not. And super drunk and pushing his card on me because I need to buy a house today. And it just, I'm just trying to do my job. Like, do you want to drink or do you not? But I think that so often people can kind of approach, especially in the referral space, with the same energy of what's in it for me, that we forget to pause and say, well, how do we make this mutually beneficial? Or what is a different way we could approach this that we both get benefit? And so, no grimy sales tactics with the business cards on the boat when you approach
Well,
this.
that actually is going to be my last question then, because that kind of came up as you're talking, and we're talking about a life coach. And, if it's an individual partnership where, you're a solopreneur, you're a founder, and you want to partner with somebody, is there a gut feeling that you have to have? Is it a, males partner better with males or females with females, or have you seen it work better? Is it more of a feeling of, what each of you stand for, what your mission is in your company, or is it definitely a question of gender bias of, who works well together? If you were to put two people together, if you're the strategic partnership fairy, what are some of those things that you look at to say this might work or these people are not compatible? Is there something like that? Is there something that we need to be worried about?
Yeah. So business is built off of trust, right? It's built off of trust and relationships. And so when people are looking for this, you have to have trust with who you're going to be building something with. Because while you're not necessarily merging a business, you're putting your reputation in conjunction with theirs. So you have to trust, I would also say that you have to have the best interests of your customers at heart. Anytime a strategic partnership that just feels transactional, that they're just pushing more products, you just slapped pink on it and made it breast cancer awareness, and there was no thought for any of that, right? So you both have to go in wanting to serve the customer, and that has to be at the forefront, because anything else, it's just going to feel cheap and gimmicky, and you're going to be sitting on a whole bunch of crappy product in your warehouse. And the other thing too is having really good set guidelines up front around ownership. If you guys are co-creating a product, do you both own it? Does one person own it? Really laying out what that looks like out of the gate is really going to help down the road as you move into that partnership.
Oh, what a great conversation, Alex. My gears are spinning. And even for myself, I've had some strategic partnerships, but usually it's because people come to me, right? We either partner on a webinar or, we do a referral, or, I work with an agency where, we have a partnership. I refer them ad clients and I do organic for them. And so it's always kind of been people coming to me. I don't think very often I've gone out and said, hey, I want to partner with you on this because I think we have the same ICP. So you've got my gear spinning. I absolutely love this conversation. Where can people meet you? Where are you most active, and how can they connect with you?
Yeah, so I'm hanging out on LinkedIn all the time. I'll be sure to comment on all the posts on LinkedIn. You can also check me out at summitandsoar.com. But yeah, I'm on LinkedIn all the time.
I'll make sure your LinkedIn profile and your website are in the show notes for those of you who are listening to this, just do Strategy Talks as a podcast, that you'll have access to get to know Alex on LinkedIn and check out her website. Thank you so much for being with us here live today. For those of you who were live and stayed all the way to the end, thank you to those of you who listen to Strategy Talks as a podcast. We appreciate you as well. I'll be back next week with another live episode of Strategy Talks. Bye, everybody.